Hello, welcome to the Spectrum series of modern history on our channel. Today we are going to discuss the chapter number 29 and the topic is Development of Indian Press. The sequence of the topics that we are going to discuss here are early regulations followed by the struggle that the early nationalists had to face, the Vernacular Press Act 1878, and then finally the regulations and how the press was during and after the First World War and the Second World War. Okay, let's start. See, it was this guy, James Augustus Hickey, in 1780, who started the Bengal Gazette or Calcutta General Advertiser, the first newspaper in India. I am going to discuss the whole topic from the prelims perspective. So, I believe that this is one of the potential questions that could be asked in prelims. It's James Augustus Hickey who started the Bengal Gazette or Calcutta General Advertiser, which was considered to be the first newspaper in India. And the year is also kind of important because if you remember this date, 1780, the year, it could be helpful while solving prelims questions as well. And you know what happened to this paper? It was seized in 1872 because of its outspoken criticism of the government. So 2 points I would like to highlight here. The paper was published in 1780, but it was seized in 1872, almost after a century. And later more newspapers came up. To name a few, it was the Bengal Journal, the Calcutta Chronicle, the Madras Courier, the Bombay Herald. Okay, so just try to remember the names. And the company's officers were worried that these newspapers might reach London and expose their misdeeds. Thus they saw the need for curbs on the press. So why are we dealing with respect to the press about the regulations that the press had to face? Why? Because the company's officers, they were actually worried that these newspapers might expose their misdeeds. For example, it could be corruption or something else. So they just wanted to keep curbs on the press. So it's important to study the regulations that the press had to face at least until our country attained independence. So let's start with Censorship of Press Act 1799. This 1799, the year, does this remind you of anything? Okay, let me tell you. Fourth Anglo-Mysore War happened in 1799 during the time period of Lord Wellesley. Okay, so Censorship of Press Act 1799, I repeat, and it was Lord Wellesley who enacted this act. What was the reason behind this? He anticipated French invasion of India because we are aware of the fact that Mysore princes, for example Tipu Sultan and his father Hyder Ali, they were inclined more towards the French compared to English. So this person had what do we say, had a fear that French invasion would be possible considering the circumstances with respect to Indian politics at that point of time. So he wanted to impose almost wartime press restrictions, including pre-censorship. Pre-censorship, what does that mean? That was like before you publish something, before you publish any journal or newspaper, you are going to have censorship. Okay, so these restrictions were relaxed under Lord Hastings, who had progressive views, and in 1818 pre-censorship was dispensed with. So it was Lord Wellesley who came up with this pre-censorship in the form of Censorship of Press Act 1799, and it was Lord Hastings who was considered to be a little bit progressive compared to Lord Wellesley, and he tried to he tried to do away with this pre-censorship. Then comes Licensing Regulations 1823. Okay, and it was the acting Governor General John Adams. Okay, try to remember the year 1823. Who was acting Governor General at that point of time? It was John Adams, who had reactionary views, enacted these. According to these regulations, starting or using a press without license was a penal offence. Okay, so the main important point here is that if you want to start a press, then the license is mandatory. If you are starting a press without license, then it was considered to be a penal offense. Okay, so later on the act was extended to cover journals, pamphlets and books also. These restrictions were directed chiefly against Indian language newspapers or those edited by Indians. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's Miratul Akbar had to stop publication. Ram Mohan Roy, who was known for his progressive and rational ideas, okay, he had a publication in the name of Miratul Akbar. Okay, so this particular publication had to be stopped owing to the licensing regulations of 1823. Proceeding further, we have Press Act of 1835 or Metcalfe Act. Okay, Metcalfe, he was the Governor General in 1835, and his time period was just for 1835 to 1836, and he repealed the obnoxious 1823 ordinance and earned the epithet Liberator of the Indian Press. Most of us are aware of the fact that there was a regulating act in 1878 which was regulated during the time period of Lytton, and it was Ripon who came after Lytton tried to do away with these things. But at the same time, you also have to remember the fact that it was actually Metcalfe who was considered as a liberator of the Indian press, because he tried to do away with the ordinances that were proposed earlier. So important point for prelims is liberator of the Indian press. Who was it? It was Metcalfe. But at the same time, he tried to come up with a new Press Act 1835. Okay, and this act required a printer or publisher to give a precise account of premises of a publication and cease functioning if required by a similar declaration. And the result of a liberal press policy was a rapid growth of newspapers. So, considering the liberal press policy of this 1835 Act, there was a rapid growth of newspapers. And still, so there was this year 1857 which was known for Sepoy Mutiny, and most of the historians also tried to call it the first war of independence. So right after 1857 we had Licensing Act 1857. Due to the emergency caused by the 1857 revolt, this act imposed licensing restrictions in addition to the already existing registration procedure laid down by the Metcalfe Act. So what is he trying to say here? He is trying to say, due to the uproar and the emergency caused by 1857 revolt, this Licensing Act 1857, it imposed restrictions, okay, licensing restrictions in addition to the existing registration procedure as laid down according to the Metcalfe Act. Okay, and the government reserved the right to stop publication and circulation of any book, newspaper or printed matter. Right. Then going ahead with the final act, which is the Registration Act 1867. What did this act do? This replaced Metcalfe's Act of 1835 and was of regulatory, not restrictive nature. Okay, this word is important. It was more of a regulatory, not restrictive in nature. As per the act, you have to just remember 2 points here. Number one, every book or newspaper was required to print the name of the printer and the publisher and the place of the publication. Okay, so what is every book or newspaper supposed to do? Every book or newspaper was required to print two things. Number one, name of the printer and the publisher, and also the place of the publication. And the second point is, a copy was to be submitted to the local government within 1 month of the publication of a book. I can't say for sure that this could be a potential question, but if it were to be asked, then you can just remember this thing, 1 month. Okay, within 1 month of the publication of the book, a copy was to be submitted to the local government. Okay, so far how many acts have we covered? Number one, Censorship of Press Act 1799, Licensing Regulations 1823, Press Act of 1835 or Metcalfe Act. Metcalfe, who is known as a regulator of the Indian press, is something that has to be remembered. And then Licensing Act 1857, and the final one is Registration Act 1867. Okay, so up till now, let's see what kind of a struggle was to be carried out by the early nationalists to secure press freedom. Okay, So, right from the early 19th century, defense of civil liberties, including the freedom of the press, had been high on nationalist agenda. As early as 1824, Rajaram Mohan Roy had protested against a resolution restricting the freedom of the press. Okay, Rajaram Mohan Roy is someone whose name has to come to your mind when we think about the press. Okay, press of India. And the early phase of nationalist movement from around 1870 to 1918 focused more on political propaganda and education, formation and propagation of nationalist ideology and arousing, training, mobilization and consolidation of public opinion than on mass agitation or active mobilization of masses through open meetings. Okay, let me divide this whole sentence into three parts. Okay, so what was he trying to say here? He says the early phase of the nationalist movement, which was from 1870 to 1918, okay, 1870 to 1918, it focused more on political agenda. He is trying to say, rather than focusing on mass agitation and active mobilization of masses, okay, these things were not carried out. What were not carried out? Mass agitation and active mobilization of masses, it was not carried out. Rather, they tried to focus more on political propaganda and education, formation and propagation of nationalist ideology. Okay, and at the same time arousing, training, mobilization and consolidation of public opinion. So these things would come handy when you're writing mains. So you can write these three things. Okay, it focused more on political propaganda and development of nationalist ideology and consolidation of public opinion rather than concentrating on mass agitation and active mobilization of masses. So for this purpose, the press proved a crucial tool in the hands of the nationalists. The Indian National Congress in its early days relied solely on the press to propagate its resolutions and proceedings. We all know that Indian National Congress was formed in the year 1885. So here the writer is trying to say that INC during its early days, it relied solely on the press. Okay, so many newspapers emerged during these years under distinguished and fearless journalists. So he is trying to name a few of them, and I think like it's better to remember the names of a few of them. For example, the Hindu and Swadesha Mitran under G. Subramanya Iyer. Okay, the Hindu and Swadesha Mitran G. Subramanya Iyer, and the Bengali under Surendranath Banerjee, Voice of India under Dadabhai Naoroji, Amrita Bazar Patrika under Sisir Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh, Indian Mirror under N.N. Sen, Kesari in Marathi and Maharatha in English under Balagangadhar Tilak, Sudarak under Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and Hindustan and Advocate under G.P. Verma. Okay, I'll try to make it easy for you. See, when we speak about Balagangadhar Tilak, we know that he had two publications in the name of Kesari and Maharatha. Try to remember the languages also in which they were published. It's Kesari in Marathi and Maharatha in English. And apart from this, these four are also important. The Bengali under Surendranath Banerjee, Voice of India under Dadabhai Naoroji. Dadabhai Naoroji, we guys know that he was famous for the concept of drain of wealth. Okay, and Amrita Bazar Patrika, this is also important because okay, I'll be dealing with it in the next slide. Amrita Bazar Patrika under Sisir Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh. Okay, just try to remember these 3 to 4 names. And other main newspapers included Tribune and Akbar-e-Am in Punjab, Gujarati, Indu Prakash, Dhyan Prakash and Kal in Bombay, and Som Prakash, Banganivasi and Sadharani in Bengal, right? Now proceeding further, these newspapers were not established as profit-making business ventures but were seen as rendering national and public service. Important point, most of us would think that newspapers were established to make profit out of them as a business venture, but you know, they were trying to render national and public service to the masses. In fact, these newspapers had a wide reach and they stimulated a library movement. They also stimulated a library movement. Their impact was not limited to cities and towns. Most of us have this notion that these newspapers at that point of time would have been limited to just cities and towns, but that's wrong. These newspapers reached the remote villages, where each news item and editorial would be read and discussed thoroughly in the local libraries, which would gather around a single newspaper. In this way, these libraries serve the purpose of not only political education but also of political participation, which was something very, very important for the Indian national struggle. Okay, not just a political education but also political participation, and newspapers played a very important role in this. In these newspapers, government acts and policies were put to critical scrutiny. They acted as an institution of opposition to the government. The government on its part had enacted many strident laws such as Section 124A. Okay, does this remind you of something? Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code. Yes, this is for sedition, which provided that anyone trying to cause disaffection against the British government in India was to be transported for life or for any term or imprisoned up to 3 years. Okay, so at that point of time, according to Section 124A of Indian Penal Code, the imprisonment would be for up to 3 years. But the nationalist-minded journalists had evolved many clever stratagems to subvert these legal hurdles. So he is trying to say, though these kind of provisions were there, our nationalist-minded journalists, they try to escape from these kind of things. Let's see how they did that. For instance, writings hostile to the government used to be prefaced with sentiments of loyalty to the government, or critical writings of socialists or Irish nationalists from newspapers in England used to be quoted. This was a very difficult task which required an intelligent mix of simplicity with subtlety. Like he is trying to explain, for example, if this is a newspaper and let's suppose there was an agitation which was going on in the country regarding an act which was recently promulgated or given by the British. He is trying to say that the newspaper, the journalists would try to write something good about the government in the very beginning, which shows their allegiance or loyalty to the government, and then they would come up with the actual thing. Okay, so he is trying to say this was a difficult thing. And the national movement from its very beginning stood for the freedom of press. The Indian newspapers became highly critical of Lord Lytton's administration, especially regarding its inhuman treatment to victims of the famine of 1876 to 77. The government struck back with the Vernacular Press Act 1878. Lord Lytton, while serving as a Governor General in India, he was known for really, really reactionary and bad policies. So he is trying to say the press tried to criticize this Governor Generals, that is Lytton's administration, especially about the way the humans were treated during the famine of 76 to 77. Okay. And but what happened after that? The government struck back with the Vernacular Press Act 1878, which was also known as Gagging Act. Okay, it was also known as Gagging Act. Now let's discuss this act in detail. Vernacular Press Act 1878. A bitter legacy of the 1857 revolt was the racial bitterness of the ruler and the ruled. After 1858, the European press always rallied behind the government in political controversies, while the vernacular press was critical of the government. He is saying after 1857 revolt, there were two divisions. For example, we have European press and the vernacular press, that is the Indian local press. He is saying the Indian local press tried to criticize the British government, whereas the European press tried to rally behind the government. There was a strong public opinion against the imperialistic policies of Lytton, compounded by terrible famine 1876 to 77 on the one hand, and lavish expenditure on the imperial Delhi Darbar on the other. Okay, during Lytton's time period as Governor General, there was this famine of 1876 to 77, and there was also a Delhi Darbar which was carried out during 1877. I guess, yeah, 1877. So it was carried out with lavish expenditure. So the vernacular press was very, very critical about this. And the Vernacular Press Act VPA was designed to better control of the vernacular press and effectively punish and repress seditious writing. The provisions of the act included the following. So it's better to remember all the three provisions of this, because there is a potential of these provisions being asked in the prelims question paper. Okay, so number 1, it's the district magistrate was empowered to call upon the printer and publisher of any vernacular newspaper to enter into a bond with the government undertaking not to cause a disaffection against the government or antipathy between persons of different religions, caste, race through published material. So it says the district magistrate, he had all the power, okay, he had all the power to call upon whom? The printer and the publisher of any vernacular newspaper. It's important to highlight the fact that it's a vernacular newspaper here, to enter into a bond with the government. What kind of undertaking was to be taken as a part of this? You know, the publisher or the printer, he was not supposed to cause any disaffection against the government, okay. And then the printer and publisher could also be required to deposit security, and he was also required to deposit security. The amount is not mentioned here, but you know, it could be forfeited if the regulation was contravened. See, there was this undertaking between the district magistrate and the printer, and he is also taking some amount of security as a deposit from the publisher. In case if it gets the regulation, in case if the regulation gets contravened, you know what's going to happen to that security deposit? It's just going to be forfeited, okay. And the press equipment could be seized if the offense reoccurred. If there is a recurrence of the offense, and you know, the press equipment is going to be seized once and for all. And the magistrate's action was final. This word is very, very important. Most of us would think, okay, there is a chance of going to the higher authorities in case the press, the press owners are not happy with the decision given by the or taken by the magistrate. But it's important to note the fact that the magistrate's action was final here, and no appeal could be made in any court of law. See how barbaric the act was. A vernacular newspaper could get exemption from the operation of the act by submitting proofs to a government censor, and this is also important. A newspaper could get exemption from the operation of the act by submitting proofs, okay, by submitting proofs to a government censor. Okay, I repeat again, there are 3 points under Vernacular Press Act. Number 1, the district magistrate had the right to call upon the printer, and there was a kind of undertaking between the printer and the district magistrate, and the deposits and the deposition of security was to be carried out by the printer and the publisher. In case the regulation was contravened, it could be forfeited, right? And the second one is the magistrate's action was final, okay, and there could be no appeal against the action carried out by the magistrate in any court of law. And the third one was the vernacular newspaper could get exemption by submitting proofs to a government censor, okay. And yeah, as I already mentioned, the act came to be nicknamed the Gagging Act, okay. Gagging means like preventing someone from breathing properly. So the worst features of this act were discrimination between English and vernacular press, and this is the reason why I asked you to take a note of the word here, vernacular newspaper, okay. This was, you know, this act was applicable only to the vernacular newspapers, and this is why it was called Gagging Act, and this was considered to be one of the worst features of the act. Clear discrimination between the English and vernacular press, and no right of appeal. So under this Vernacular Press Act, proceedings were instituted against Som Prakash, Bharat Meher, Dhaka Prakash and Samachar. You know, one point to be noted here is the Amrita Bazar Patrika. You remember Amrita Bazar Patrika? Here we already discussed this. Amrita Bazar Patrika under Sisir Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh. Yeah. So let's come back. Incidentally, Amrita Bazar Patrika turned overnight into an English newspaper to escape the VPA. So as we have already discussed, we know that VPA was only for the vernacular newspapers. So this Amrita Bazar Patrika, which was started by Sisir Kumar Ghosh and Motilal Ghosh, it turned overnight into an English newspaper, okay. Later, the pre-censorship clause was repealed, and a press commissioner was appointed to supply authentic and accurate laws to the press. There was a strong opposition to the act, and finally repealed it in 1882. In 1883, Surendranath Banerjee became the first Indian journalist to be imprisoned. Okay, this is also important for prelims. Who was the first person? Okay, who was the first journalist to be imprisoned? In 1883, it was Surendranath Banerjee. In an angry editorial in the Bengali, we already read that the Bengali was published by whom? It was Surendranath Banerjee. He had criticized a judge of Calcutta High Court for being insensitive to the religious sentiments of Bengalis in one of his judgments. Just remember that. And Bal Gangadhar Tilak is most frequently associated with the nationalist fight for the freedom of press. Tilak had been building up anti-imperialist sentiments among the public through Ganapati festivals started in 1893, Shivaji festivals started in 1896, and through his newspapers Kesari and Maharashtra. Kesari and Maharashtra, we have just discussed. Kesari was in which language? It was in Marathi language, and Maharashtra was in English language. Okay. So what is he trying to say here? Tilak, he tried to create anti-imperialist sentiments through festivals like Ganapati festivals, Shivaji festivals, and newspapers. And he was among the first to advocate bringing the lower middle classes, the peasants, artisans, and workers into the Congress fold. In 1896, he organized an all Maharashtra campaign for boycott of foreign cloth in opposition to the imposition of excise duty on cotton. Okay. In 1896, what did he do? He organized a campaign for boycott of foreign cloth in opposition to the imposition of excise duty on cotton. And in the same year, he initiated a no tax campaign in Maharashtra, urging farmers to withhold the payment of revenue if their crop had failed. So in 1897, plague occurred in Pune. Okay, important point. In 1897, plague occurred in Pune. So what happened as part of this? Although Tilak supported government measures to check plague, there was large-scale popular resentment against heartless and harsh methods such as segregation and house searches. The popular unrest resulted in the murder of the chairman of the plague committee in Pune by the Chapekar brothers. Actually, in 1897, the whole Pune was struck with plague. So, although he tries to say, although Tilak was happy with the government measures which were being carried out to check plague, there was resentment against the methods, okay, which were carried out. And he is also trying to give more explanation. He says the popular unrest resulted in the murder of the chairman. Actually, there were these people called Chapekar brothers. They murdered the chairman of the plague committee. This plague committee was sponsored by the British government, and the chairman of the plague committee in Pune, he was murdered by Chapekar brothers. And the government policies on tariff, currency, and famine were also behind this popular resentment. So what happened as a result of this murder? The government had been looking for an opportunity to check this militant trend and hostility in the press. They decided to make Tilak a victim to set an example to the public. The British government had always been at loggerheads with this guy Tilak, so they just wanted to take an opportunity to set an example by making this guy Tilak a victim. So he was arrested after the murder of Rand on the basis of the publication of a poem. Okay, so this Rand was actually murdered by whom? Chapekar brothers. So post which Tilak publicized a poem. He publicized a poem, Shivaji's Utterances in Kesari. Okay, he published it in the name of Shivaji's Utterances in Kesari, and a speech which Tilak had delivered at the Shivaji festival, justifying Afzal Khan's murder by Shivaji. So there was a speech delivered by Tilak in which he mentioned and he justified Afzal Khan's murder by Shivaji. So Tilak's defense of Shivaji's killing of Afzal Khan was portrayed by the prosecution as an incitement to kill British officials. So how was this portrayed by the British government? They thought Tilak was deliberately delivering these kind of speeches so as to incite the normal people to kill British officials, due to which Chapekar brothers killed the Rand and Irest. Okay, the name of Irest is not given. It was actually two people, Rand and Ayrest, Irest. These two people who were part of this plague committee, they were murdered by Chapekar brothers. And finally, what happened? Tilak was held guilty and awarded rigorous imprisonment of 18 months. Simultaneously, several other editors in Bombay Presidency were tried and given similar harsh sentences. There were widespread protests against these measures. Overnight, Tilak became a national hero and was given the title of Lokmanya. Okay, Lokmanya. What does that mean? It means he was respected and honored by the people, a new leader who preached with his deeds. And in 1899, so what happened in 1898, the government amended this section 128, which was known for sedition, and it added another section called section 153A, which made it a criminal offence for anyone to bring into contempt the government of India or to create a hatred among different classes, that is vis-a-vis the English in India. So this led to nationwide protests. During Swadeshi and boycott movements and due to the rise of militant nationalist trends, several repressive laws were passed. So to name a few, there were two of these. Number one, Newspaper Incitement to Offences Act 1908 and Indian Press Act 1910. Okay. So what was this Incitement to Offences Act about? Aimed against extremist nationalist activity, the act empowered the magistrates to confiscate press property which published objectionable material likely to cause incitement to murder or acts of violence. So even if at the slightest excuse me, even at the slightest provocation, if the British thought that there could be an incitement to murder or to any act of violence, the magistrate was given the power to confiscate the press property. Okay, and Tilak, as a leader of militant nationals, was tried on charges of sedition and transported to Mandalay. Mandalay is in today's Myanmar for 6 years. Okay, for 6 years. This led to countrywide protests. Excuse me. In Bombay, textile workers and railway workshop workers took on the army in streets and went on strike for days. Lenin hailed this as the entrance of the Indian working class on the political stage. And the next act was Indian Press Act 1910. The act revived the worst features of the Vernacular Press Act. Local government was empowered to demand a security at registration from the printer or publisher and forfeit or deregister if it was an offending newspaper, and the printer of a newspaper was required to submit 2 copies of each issue to the local government free of charge. Okay, so it's important to know the details of Indian Press Act 1910. He's saying it was an act which revived the worst features of Vernacular Press Act, and the local government was given the power to demand a security, okay, that is a security deposit, and also forfeit if it was an offending newspaper. See, like what how worse the features of the act were. And coming to the last topic, it was just like how the press had been during the First World War and during the Second World War. So, Defense of India rules were imposed for repression of the political agitation and free public criticism during the First World War. In 1921, on the recommendations of a press committee chaired by Tej Bahadur Sapru, okay, the Press Acts of 1908-1910 were repealed. The important point to make a note of is Tej Bahadur Sapru here. Okay, so who was the chairman of the press committee, which was formulated in 1921? It was Tej Bahadur Sapru, and the Press Acts of 1908 and 1910 were repealed then. And Indian Press Emergency Powers Act 1931. This act gave sweeping powers to provincial governments to suppress propaganda for civil disobedience movement. It was further amplified in 1932 to include all activities calculated to undermine government authority. Okay. So, what did this act do? This act gave the powers to the governments to suppress propaganda for civil disobedience movement. It was further amplified in 1932. We are aware of the fact that it was in 1930 the civil disobedience movement was carried out. So, in order to suppress the propaganda for this movement, Indian Press Emergency Powers Act 1931 was carried out. Okay, and finally, what happened during the Second World War? Under the Defense of India rules, again the same rules, pre-censorship was imposed and amendments made in Press Emergency Act and Official Secrets Act. At one time, publication of all news related to Congress activity was declared illegal. Okay, so just remember that under the Defense of India rules, pre-censorship was imposed again, and amendments made in Press Emergency Act and Official Secrets Act. Okay, and at some point of time the news activities related to Congress were just declared illegal, right. So with this we are just winding up the chapter 29. I'll see you with another chapter soon. Till then, bye.